Hey, what's up, guys? It's Josh. Today I want to go over a new topic, part of a little mini series that I want to present to you all. It's about MIDI sweetening. What is MIDI sweetening? Well, basically, it's the concept of recording your live instruments, live players, and blending that back into your MIDI sampled production. So, this could be one musician, it could be several musicians, but essentially, you're either replacing some of those instruments that you've been writing, or you are layering them in and you're blending it in a sense to make the orchestra sound more real. So for this video, I want to go over some reasons as why you should MIDI sweeten. And also, I'm going to play devil's advocate and go over why you shouldn't, or things at least to consider during that time. So let's go ahead and talk about the reasons as to why you should. The first, most important reason I think is the quality. Your mix will drastically improve when you incorporate live musicians. There's something about the nuances and expression, overall phrasing that just beats out any samples that you can program in. Let's go ahead and go over some elements of this through some recordings that I have for you. I'm going to show you some stuff that I've written that I've sweetened up. Okay, what you see here is a version of just the mock-up itself, and mind you, this mock-up here on this example is very ghetto. It's just using notation sounds from Sibelius, but I just want to give you that drastic comparison between the two. This is a string chamber sound. Okay, so what you just heard was a very flat, very lifeless type of sound, right? Now, what I did is I went ahead and orchestrated this and I put this into my sample libraries, but it was still missing something. And that's when I decided to ask my client if I can record a live solo violinist along with a pianist that was accompanying the violinist. And so then I blended that with my the rest of the orchestra, my virtual orchestra that I have here, and this is what it sounds like. Okay, and all of a sudden it comes to life. There's more dimension. It becomes more 3D, so to speak, right? The what I loved about what Maria Dance did in her violin playing is that there's just a lot of vibrato, and especially towards the middle of this piece, it's just very expressive. I'll just, if I may indulge, I'll play you a little bit more of her playing. Okay, and you compare that to this lifeless recording of samples. Right. So there's something about when you hear the two against each other, anyone that listens to that first one are going to be probably turned off by that immediately. Even if it's under something in a commercial or if it's for a film, they probably won't enjoy what they're watching because they might be distracted by how fake and how sampled these are and how synthetic it makes it and how cheap it makes it, so to speak. So by sweetening this, and again, you're not replacing the entire piece with live players, you're just incorporating a few, you can really make a huge difference in the quality of your sound. Here's one other example that I like to talk about. I used a sampled pan flute in this example on the top here, so I'll play you a little bit of that. I don't really hear a lot of ups and downs, in the crescendos and decrescendos. Let's go ahead and compare that to the live pan flute that's in this production. So in that, there's just a lot of shaping. There's more vibrato, and the phrasing's better. This is a good example of that here. Right, as compared to this spot where it's the sampled version. Right, so you can hear the difference, and those little nuances is what really makes that piece come alive, I think. Number two is the collaborative spirit. So one thing that I like to do is I like to hire musicians that can improvise. For instance, I had a bass player who threw down some bass lines for me for this Christmas song. This little line, it was something that the bassist added, not me. Just a little fill that he added made a huge difference in this piece that I was writing for my client. I'll play you the whole thing. In this case, this is a backing track up here, and this is the his take on the bottom. Yeah, and as you can tell, that was a cheery holiday type of song that I was writing. But with that, everything that I had in the mock-up version was so simple and basic. I didn't have any of this kind of rhythmic pulse that he was doing throughout this part. I just had quarter notes. It was really boring, and so that actually goes to that back to that point where you are basically um, adding value by having the player just write a line for you in a sense. Not always will that be the case, but there are those special moments where you just get more excited about the piece when your players start to give you suggestions and ideas on how to make it better. And so that's again another reason as why you should do this. So now let's go ahead and talk about some of these other reasons as to why you shouldn't, or in another way of looking at it, some reasons that you should consider that I will go over today. So this was kind of like a pros and cons of the MIDI sweetening process, and the cons here are the following: the costs, the time, and inconvenience. So I think for that first reason, the cost is a big one, and this might be something that is of a hurdle for many of you that don't have the resources to hire somebody, especially if your budget that you're given as a freelance composer is very small. In this case, then you have to really consider your options and be very resourceful of the times when you can hire a musician. Number two is the time. The time here is a factor of um, the preparation phase and also the editing phase. So when you are hiring and booking a musician, you also need to prepare some sheet music. You have to prepare some tracks, a minus track or a click track, and have them record over that. And that takes some time alone to get that prepped up and ready for them to receive. There's also a thing about the scheduling. So your musician that you want to hire might not be available for you right away, and so there might be a week involved where you have to wait. There might be a month sometimes, and so you do have to consider that the musicians that are perhaps in higher demand or have a higher quality about them are going to be a little bit harder to book sometimes. And so this is a challenge alone. So if you're on a time crunch, this might not be a good fit for you. Third point is more of an inconvenience factor. So there is a convenience factor when you're composing inside of the box, of course. Especially if it's like at midnight and you are working for a few hours, you can play around with those ideas and you can send that over to your clients. And so when things like this happen, there's probably no absolute way to get a live player out by that time. You have to plan ahead, and there's just a lot of logistical things about recording someone that you might not have been used to before. So all of those points I just mentioned, the cost, time, and inconvenience factor, is something to consider, and as to why you should MIDI sweeten. The number one quality factor of elevating your music will trump all of those other reasons in my mind. However, it's something to consider, and that's something that we should always strive for, because when at the end of the day, when you look back on your tracks, you're not going to think about all the time you spent. You'll be more satisfied or dissatisfied by the way it sounds. And the last thing I want to talk about is MIDI sweetening is kind of the first stepping stone to recording, um, a live orchestra, or recording a bunch of players to replace what you have as a mock-up. MIDI sweetening is kind of a hybrid of the two, but nonetheless, it's still you are providing someone a job. You are sustaining their livelihood. And imagine if we only composed inside of the box all of the time. It doesn't really make sense when a director wants to make a movie and all they use is stock footages. If you were to transfer that to the music world, I think it's important for you as a musician to also realize that there is something about creating a community for the musicians around you locally and abroad. So that is another reason why I think you should MIDI sweeten. Okay, so that is MIDI sweetening in a nutshell. If you want to see how the process works with a step-by-step approach, I'm actually going to show you that in the next videos. The next video I'll talk about how to get your arrangement ready and prepping that with sheet music and all the related materials like the minus tracks, and how to get that all set up so that you can send that over to your musicians. Be sure to hit the like button and the subscribe with the notification bell so you'll know when that next video comes out. I will see you next time.